Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carl Nathy. I'm with the University of Kentucky Office of Public Relations and Marketing. It's my honor to be here to introduce the presenters at each of these forums that we're going to have. We have about an hour for each one. This is, of course, the faculty session. Will be followed by the staff session, and a little bit later on today, the student session. I would ask that you please silence any cell phones or pagers at this time, as a courtesy to our speakers. Please silence your cell phones. Thank you. And we are on a kind of a schedule. As I said, we have about an hour. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Holly Swanson. She is Senate Council Chair of the University of Kentucky Senate and a member of the UK Presidential Search Committee. She is a professor in the Department of Molecular and Biomedical Pharmacology. After earning her PhD in food science toxicology from Purdue University College of Agriculture, Dr. Swanson was a postdoctoral fellow first at Michigan State University College of Agriculture and Biochemistry and Northwestern University College of Medicine, Molecular Pharmacology and Biological Chemistry. Dr. Swanson came to the University of Kentucky College of Medicine in 1995. She has been continuously funded since 1995 by the National Institutes of Health and has also received funding from the American Lung Association, the American Institute for Cancer Research, and the American Cancer Society. Dr. Swanson's research is focused on understanding how environmental contaminants contribute to chronic human diseases. Her ultimate goal is to use that knowledge to develop therapies that would counter these adverse effects. In addition to teaching and mentoring students at UK, Dr. Swanson has served as a grant reviewer for NIH, the National Science Foundation, and several other prominent organizations. She's also served on the Institute of Medicine National Academies of Sciences Committee to review the health effects of Vietnam veterans and is currently serving on the Kentucky Equine Drug Research Council. She is on the editorial board of Toxicology and Applied Pharmacology and is a member of a number of several national scientific organizations. Please welcome Professor Holly Swanson.
Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be here this morning, and I'd like to welcome all of our guests and our faculty, and thank you for participating in this very exciting day and helping to shape the future of our university. I'm very privileged to be able to present our preferred candidate today. But before I introduce him, what I'd like to tell you, just a brief moment, is what I learned this weekend. And one thing I learned this weekend is that our board, as well as Eli, fully understand the power of we. And we have a number of our board members here today, and I'd like to introduce Pam May, Bill Gatton, Keith Gannon. Everett, I know, is intending on being here, but he had to change his vocal schedule, and Joe Peak and Sheila Brothers. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. Today we are here to meet Eli Capilouto, and it is a real privilege to be able to introduce him. Dr. Capilouto is currently provost at the University of Alabama at Birmingham and former dean of the School of Public Health, where he holds the rank of professor currently. As a provost, he's worked closely with administrators, faculty, staff, and students to advance new initiatives in innovative teaching and learning, research and service in accordance with the university's strategic plan. The plan's goals and objectives include systems of accountability, measured by university and school scorecards, and a budgeting system aligned with productivity and quality. A native of Alabama, Dr. Capilouto received his bachelor's and dental degrees, as well as a master's degree in epidemiology from schools within the University of Alabama system. In 1991, he received his doctorate in health policy and management from the Harvard University School of Public Health. While at Harvard, he was a recipient of the Robert Wood Johnson Dental Scholars Award, a National Center for Health Sciences Research Fellowship, and Charles Willinsky Award for Academic Achievement. He has recently served on the National Advisory Dental and Craniofacial Research Council of the National Institutes of Health and as a member of the Executive Committee of the Council on Academic Affairs of the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. He was a member of the Pew Health Professions Advisory Panel for Dentistry and has served as a consultant to the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine and the American Association of Academic Health Centers. He has also served as a referee and editor for many professional journals. Dr. Capilouto is active in local volunteer organizations, having served in leadership roles on the board of the YMCA, Red Cross, Ronald McDonald House, and Temple Emmanuel. He served 8 years in the Mountain Brooks City Schools Board of Education. He is current past president of the Kiwanis Club of Birmingham, the largest Kiwanis club in the world, and is a member of the A+ College Ready Managing Board that oversees a statewide initiative to increase advanced placement success among high school students. In 2008, he received the National Conference for Community and Justice Brotherhood Sisterhood Award for Outstanding Community Service. Welcome. Just a few housekeeping. One of the things that we'd like to do is we'd like to make this process as fair as possible, and what I've done is brought my son's timer. And we'll give people 3 minutes to ask their questions, and Dr. Capilouto does not have a time, but we do. And also, what I'd ask is, could you please refer your questions to me? We'll ask Dr. Capilouto to first give us a brief overview. We'll ask our questions, and then we'll close with his final comments.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And I appreciate all of you being here today. I prefer not to be on the stage. I feel a little closer and hope I can better connect with you if I'm here. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand. And let me tell you how gratified and honored I am to be considered as your next president. About 10 years ago, when my daughter was 13 years old, she insisted that I watch the movie Gladiator. And I didn't understand exactly why, but looking for a bonding moment with my daughter, I said, let's watch it. At the end of the program, I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I turned to her and I said, wow, what was the most important statement in that movie that Russell Crowe made? And she said, I don't know. And I said, please, as a parent, what was the most important statement he made? And she said, oh, I got it. On my command, unleash hell. And I said, no, that's not it. Said the most important question is, he turns to his followers and he says, why are we here? So that's the question I ask myself every day, and a question I especially ask myself in the past few weeks. I am uprooting myself, hopefully, from a state that has been my home for all but 4 years of my life when I was in Boston, and a university that has been a family to me. So why am I coming? And that's because I believe in you. I got called on a Saturday afternoon after a morning of exercise to look at this position. I really never thought of myself being anywhere else. They told me I need to look at some materials that they were going to send me, but I needed to let them know of my interest by the next day. I read the materials they sent me, your top 20 plan, some other materials. I looked on the web a little while and I said, this sounds interesting. I want to take a look. I went through the first interview, and what struck me the most, the only people I had any interaction with, were first of all the members of your Board of Trustees and the faculty members and student members, staff members on the committee. And I felt an immediate bond and connection with those people. And after my second round of interviews, I can tell you, you have a special group of advocates and leaders in your Board of Trustees. They have a deep affection, affinity, loyalty that I found unsurpassed. And that means a lot. And I know that they believe in you as well. When I was invited back to the second round of interviews, my wife and I looked at each other and said, gee, this is a big step. And you do a great job with everything that you put together in the form of print and also digitally, but we wanted to see firsthand. So last Tuesday we flew into Louisville and drove over to your campus. Someone told me they that their office knew there was a candidate on campus, but I didn't feel like we got detected until later in the evening. But we just walked this campus for 6 hours, and we just intermingled with people, mostly students and staff, and we learned that you are the real thing, that people really do care about students and put students first, that they have great pride in their university. We went to the Young Library, which makes a profound statement. I visited lots of campuses in my life. But when your most spectacular building is a library, it speaks volumes about your values. My wife, when we left there, she's a former academic. She's a dean emeritus of our dental school in Birmingham. Turned to me and said that was a sanctuary of learning. And it was a powerful moment for us. We also talked to others around the campus. I hope I see her at one of these forums today. There was Clara in the Stuckert Center who told me with such great pride about the internship she was working on for students, and that the Disney group had just visited. And those are special things that you can't find on the web. I walked over to your medical area, similar to our medical area in Birmingham, where you find many grateful patients from all walks of life, and that was terrific. The other thing we noticed was a mosaic of cultures and colors and class, and your rich diversity, which meant a lot to us. That evening, we wanted to learn something about the city, so I got some recommendations of where you may walk around and look at restaurants and places where you'd want to have fun. So we walked in and out of several restaurants and had a delightful meal at A La Lucy's, and everybody that came by, we asked them, what do you think about Lexington? And universally we heard, it's a terrific place for a career, terrific place to raise a family, terrific place to be part of a family. And that was music to our ears. I stuck my head in one restaurant just to take a look at it, and then I got outed there. Swami, your provost, I heard him yell my name. And what he said to me was important too. He came over and said, why are you here? I have a cousin who's on the faculty. I talked to her last night. She said, well, maybe more people will know how to pronounce my name if you come, so that'll be good. But I told him I was visiting my cousin. That wasn't the only reason I was here. But he said something to me with great excitement, because we had talked about this in the past. He said, we got a great score on our CTSA proposal, these clinical translational research centers. And we have one of those, $30 million grant. What's important to me about those, it's going to take discoveries more quickly to the bedside, treatment rooms, and communities. And to make our work relevant in that way is a grand thing. But the other thing it tells me is you can work together to pull off something like that. It takes everybody coming together to be successful. And that meant a lot to me. And the next morning before we left, we wanted to get some sample of horse country here, so I drove out to Keeneland and had breakfast at the Track Kitchen and talked to some people out there, and you hear different languages and different stories. But there and everywhere, what I saw most was the color blue. And I know about the color blue. And that is a great builder of community and a great opportunity to leverage what you do. I also asked for some information last week that was assembled quickly for me to let me learn about the faculty. Information was shared with me, and I'm familiar with this because we use it at our university. It's one way to get a sample of what you're doing. It's not the only way. But I looked at some of the information from academic analytics. I think all of us across the country are trying to figure out ways to use data and information to build better programs and so forth. So I looked at that, and I knew you had a great faculty along with other information. You have something special here, and that is you have a flagship university with an academic health center. And there are not too many of those. There are not too many of those. That's very precious. To be able to offer experience for students in bi-directional ways with those multitude of disciplines in a day that they're probably going to live hyphenated lives in the future in a variety of jobs, some they haven't even imagined yet. You need to have this kind of environment for preparation, and that is truly unique. So this is a special place. I do believe in what you're doing. The other thing is, I'll close on this and open it up for questions. When I was about 15 years old, I grew up in Montgomery. My father took me to Birmingham to see what was then the medical center, and we have a statue called Vulcan that was an exhibit at the World's Fair in the 30s, I think. It sits atop Red Mountain overlooking the city of Birmingham. We were going to go see the medical center in Vulcan. So I remember that day. You spent more time at Vulcan because driving around the medical center, we had a medical school, a dental school. I learned later a debt-ridden hospital, county hospital. We had one building that was an extension center, and that was what would grow to be UAB. The first president we had came from Boston. I knew him. He used to have a quote that he said back then when we were only 15 city blocks. He said, "We would do Birmingham a great disservice if we dreamed too little dreams." And people thought this man was full of folly. And I can tell you today, we're 85 city blocks. We're touching lives all over the state, nation, and world. I've visited our $30 million operation in Zambia and seen people literally leave deathbeds and know what kind of work can go on in lives that can be touched. But it was always because of this crazy dream that we thought we could be something better and unique. So I know it can happen. And I know you had big dreams here, and I know you struggle with them, but the important thing is to maintain those aspirations and dreams. The other thing I've learned over the last 9 years is, from my president, is the importance of accountability. And you know what? We don't always get it right, and we can't measure everything. But every day we've got to remember, most of what we do is with other people's money. It's from citizens across this state in the form of their tax dollars. It's from agencies in Washington, a lot of that from tax dollars. From patient care and tuition and fees. So we have many, many people to honor with our service. And it's good and healthy to be accountable, and I spotted that in you as well. So those are the reasons I'm here today, and I look forward to answering your questions. And Holly, you can take it.
Please come up to the mics, and when you have a question, please state your name and college. And to get us going, I thought I'd just go ahead and get this one out of the way because some folks have sent me questions. This is our question. As the new president of the University of Kentucky, how would you establish the appropriate balance between academics, athletics, and healthcare?
So we have all those ingredients on our campus, but we don't have anything comparable to the Big Blue Nation. I'll recognize that, but that is a real strength. Let me first of all talk about athletics and what it's meant to our campus, and I'm sure it's the case here. We certainly have had success, especially in basketball. I will note that we were extremely successful 2 out of the last 3 times we played the University of Kentucky. That's where I first met the Blue Nation in Columbus, Ohio at the NCAA tournament. But here's what's important to me, the lives of these student athletes. And they are busy, and they are disciplined, and they come out better people. And that goes across all the sports, especially the sports we have for females today. So I think those can be very good things and very healthy. Athletics is a way to certainly build community far beyond your borders, and that can be healthy. I think an academic health center that I've talked about earlier offers all kinds of opportunities for people from every corner of the campus to work together. As we really beefed up our undergraduate programs in the last 9 years at UAB, we promised our students that you'd be able to work with world-class scientists from across our university. We have, in our medical school and joint health sciences, 1,200 faculty. So we opened the doors, and that's been a marvelous experience for our medical center as well. Our medical school realized that if you really wanted to climb in terms of your rankings and at least your reputation, it was important to have a powerful and successful undergraduate program, that we were all in this together, that our brand and reputation was leveraged. So I see all of these things, importantly working together. None of those entities could be the University of Kentucky in and of themselves and by themselves. The challenge we face is, in this environment, how do we, as a team, work together with respect and understanding, with deep appreciation for the challenges that each of our units face.
Thank you, Eli. Kaveh?
Hi, my name is Kaveh Tagavi, College of Engineering. I'm going to ask a somewhat unusual question. What is the most serious mistake you made as provost, and how did you rectify it? And we promise not to tell the UAB folks.
You
so
sure?
You can tell us.
Well, I'm going to confess I have erasers on all my pencils. I do make mistakes, all right? And I live in an environment that some days, the amount of time you have to make decisions, I call it, ready, shoot, aim. And I think I've been reasonably successful, but the mistakes that I feel the worst about have been what I think is the deepest responsibility you have as an administrator, and that is selecting your talent, the talent to serve your university, to be part of your team. Talent begets talent. You pick somebody outstanding, and you can typically watch in a department or a school 20 years later how that talent has transcended the unit. And so it's so important to pick the right people. And sometimes I haven't picked the right people, and sometimes I haven't mentored people as well as I should. But I have learned from that. It certainly made me more direct in my advice. And it's also helped me to remember to always listen and ask a lot of questions. So that's where my mistakes have been, and I hope I've learned from them.
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, hi. I very much appreciated the comment you made about accountability. The examples you gave, though, were primarily, if not exclusively, financial accountability, which is indeed very important. But I have another question based on the 3 years I'm completing on University Senate. Month after month, administrators have come before us and made presentations that were misleading, or made promises they did not keep, or said they were going to do one thing and did another. And the question I have is, how will you keep your staff accountable, or your administration? And I mean specifically, if the minutes of the University Senate indicate irrefutably that something has been said and another thing done, or a promise made and not kept, or a misleading presentation given, how will you deal with that administrator? Is that someone you would want in your administration? And how will you specifically go about making that clear?
Well, first of all, let me say that the accountability that we address at our university, you can go on our websites and take a look at this. They are a variety of metrics, and I don't think any of them relate to just pure financial accountability. We certainly have metrics that deal with funding. That's an easy one to measure when you're looking at research. But if you look at our undergraduate education, for instance, besides enrollment, we want progress on the competency exams that we offer students. We're dedicated to a quality degree. We certainly look at graduation rate, but we also look at success rate of transfer students. So it's more comprehensive. I don't want to give you the impression that it's all about budget. It's not. And I'm sorry, I can't comment on the specific circumstances that you mentioned. I do work in a spirit of transparency. I hold chief responsibility for the budgets at our academic units. Those are published on my website. Every nickel that every unit gets, according to our 3 revenue lines, are published. We have investment pools that we like people to compete for. That's an open process. Those are the kinds of things I feel comfortable with because, quite frankly, I get better ideas when we go through that process.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ellen Roseman. I'm the chair of the English department. You have an impressive background in medicine. I know you visited the medical center here, and you just spoke very eloquently about synergies between the medical center and undergraduate science students. Sure. What I'd like to know, probably very predictably, is what your vision is for the liberal arts, social sciences, bench sciences that might not feed into the medical center,
Sure.
the education school, fine arts, both undergraduate and graduate education.
Right. Thank you for your question. I know we often speak about STEM today, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I visited a new school in Eastlake, Georgia, a few months ago. I don't know if you know about Eastlake, Georgia, but it was a community that was drug-ridden, heavy crime, 13% employment rate in the community. People came together to holistically rebuild that community. They have a new elementary school there today. 95% of the students are on supported lunch programs because of the poverty they're in. But they are now the best performers, I think, among the best, top 6 schools. What has been key to them is not STEM, but STEAM. And they introduced A into that because it stands for arts. And I think we all share a common humanity, and the arts help us find our soul. When I toured your facilities, I went to your theater, I went to the Singletary Center. I asked what was on the schedule. Music to my ears was the Youth Symphony plays here this evening. That reflects the quality of life and richness of a community. In terms of what we've done as a university on the undergraduate education side, when I became provost, with my president, we dedicated great attention to undergraduate education and undergraduate life. We petitioned the city and closed 4 streets and captured 4 city blocks and built a new green or quad. We ringed that with a new academic building, residence halls, remodeled chemistry facilities, rec center, and made that the hub of life where people can congregate. We reformed our undergraduate education. It was a faculty-driven process where we focused on quantitative literacy, ethics and civic responsibility, and oral and written communication. And we've tried to do that across our curriculum. Have we been perfect? Did we have to back up and learn from our mistakes? Sure we did. But I think we have made progress. Because, as I said earlier, those folks who, we have this deep obligation to provide a quality education are going to live lives that we can barely imagine in terms of their jobs or careers. And so I think it's vitally important that this education is balanced and it includes the arts and the humanities.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Ellen Hahn. I'm a professor in the College of Nursing and the College of Public Health. And my question, well, first of all, I'm very fortunate because I've been able to be the co-chair of our tobacco-free policy on campus with Vice President for Campus Services, Anthony Beatty. And this is an important issue for our state because we lead the nation in smoking. We spend over $1 billion treating sick people from tobacco, and I know your background in public health, and I appreciate that. My question, though, is specifically, you know, our Board of Trustees and President Todd have really been taken a huge, bold step in our state to make our campus tobacco-free, and we have been tobacco-free over a year and a half, and we still have challenges.
I noticed that on my tour, too.
Yes. We have challenges, and so my question is, what would you do to promote the communication and the respect for this policy on campus?
Well, as a visitor to your campus, I noticed symbols on the sidewalks and small signs, and salute you for doing that. We face those challenges. We're in the heart of a city, and the city really has jurisdiction over the streets and all, and so it's a challenge. And let me say about tobacco use, I certainly know the ills and the cost and how it robs life and quality years of life. Some of the research I did looked at the effect of excise tax on tobacco use for young children, and it certainly makes a difference. So there are all kinds of ways one has to tackle a problem like that. There are economic disincentives, there are behavioral incentives, and so forth. I remember some of the early research in tobacco. You know, they tried all kinds of things, and if you would look at the impact, you really didn't find any. But collectively, we saw this decline in tobacco. So this is another step, along with a variety of other things that I think will shift this. Well, I salute your board, especially in the context that you just described. You know, the difficulty we face sometimes when I talk to our police and people like that are, you know, how do you enforce this? You know? And the real difficult one is when I walk around your campus and I see this, is somebody's with an IV pole and a cigarette. You know, that's a you know, contrast that you wonder, how do you reach here? But that you've made the statement and that you've made the step, and that I'm sure, I'll imagine you do this, that the other thing you have to provide is, you know, smoking cessation programs and support like that. That's vitally important to bring people along. So I think you should be extremely proud of what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dan Rowland. I'm Director Emeritus of the Gaines Center for the Humanities and also a member of the History Department in the College of Arts and Sciences. But my question really doesn't have so much to do with my position as a faculty member, but as a community member. You have an amazing record of community service, both on the school board and lots of other things you've been doing. I was wondering, the Gaines Center brought a man named Omar Blake here in the spring and gave a really interesting talk. And I was wondering if you're familiar with his work, or in general, your interest in kind of harvesting possible synergies between the community of Lexington and Kentucky and the University of Kentucky.
Sure. Now, I'm not familiar with his work, but from an early age, I've followed the principle of paying your civic rent. And I do it for a lot of reasons. I've had a lot of good in my life, and you have an obligation to return that service in a variety of ways. The other reason I do this is I learn immensely from it. I've learned more about K through 12 education serving on a school board than you could ever imagine. I've learned a lot from school teachers who are on the front lines every day. I'm learning a lot as a participant who is trying to replicate in our community what I described earlier in Eastlake, Georgia, a holistic approach to restoring a really broken down community, Woodlawn, Alabama, in Birmingham. And it takes that kind of sort of collective collaboration to be able to pull those things off today. So it's just part of who I am, and a lot of it I do quietly. And some of the things I do it's just to remind me how fortunate I am. At least once a year, sometimes twice, I volunteer to spend a night at a shelter. My temple, along with Southside in Birmingham churches, we serve as rotating sites for homeless families. There are not too many shelters for families. And when you spend a night with people who you really see, gee, you could have ended up there. You know, they work hard. In the morning, they take showers, take their kids to schools, and they go to their jobs. But given the economic climate and all, they've lost their home and, load everything in their car every day. I do those things kind of selfishly to remind me of, what's really important in life.
Thank you. Bob?
Hi,
Excuse me.
over here.
Sorry.
It's all right. Bob Grossman, Department of Chemistry. So sometimes what's most important is not necessarily the things that you've done well, but where you've messed up and what you've learned from it. So
Sure.
would you be willing to share with us one of your disasters as an administrator and what you learned from it and how you resolved not to let that sort of thing happen again?
Well, I think if I'd had some major disasters, I wouldn't be here today. So I don't think I've had any major ones, but I'll tell you some recent things that I took a look at. At our university, based on some input from faculty, early on we decided to take a look at the organization of our schools. And we came out of that process that was quite open and involved lots of input and lots of faculty advice. We reorganized 4 of our schools into one college. And I made a pledge to the faculty that after that we would look at the office of the provost, because that office was really built to support a different structure. I had somebody who I'd really never met who came on campus and interviewed 50 people and looked at a lot of data and all. And we realized we had the wrong structure. I talked about the improvements we tried to make in our undergraduate education. He told me I'd hit a wall, that it just wasn't working out there, that people didn't own it as much as they'd need to. So, we made the decision to shift that operation and that responsibility to our new college, where most of our undergraduate education took place. That coming from administration wasn't the best way to approach it. And I thought we were doing a pretty good job. So we shifted and reorganized my office and reduced it significantly and moved some of those activities. That's a more recent one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Buck Ryan in journalism, and first I wish to commend you for confronting one of the greatest challenges known to mankind, moving, particularly after many years. So
it's a chance to clean out the attic. That's what my wife does.
I have a question and a follow-up. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you, but the question is, in your dealing with the student press as provost, when you would see a story that was written that wouldn't be exactly correct, how did you deal with reporters or editors there on your campus? And the follow-up is just on the secrecy of the process, which sort of runs against openness and transparency. How did you personally deal with that, and what did you think about that as applying for president of a public university?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I've had to do and is recruit talent for a variety of positions at my university. And I'm proud of the talent I've been able to draw to my community and university. And it is difficult to get people to become candidates. And I would say that a lot of people who you want to look at aren't going to engage in a process where things become quite public early. It's just a fact in some of these searches. So apparently that's a decision that the leadership here at your university made in the way that it conducted the search. I think I am certainly here today, and I'm happy and pleased to answer any questions and hope that you feel good about me in this process. The other thing that was heartening to me is the people who engaged in the search. You had strong faculty that asked hard questions that are similar to the ones you're asking today. You had staff representation, and having staff representation on a board is quite unique. I don't know where I've ever seen that. And so you have, the things I think that are important to having representation in a process like that. And what was the other question you asked? Students. Students. And their journalism and the press that they run. Well, it's a balancing act. I believe that the last thing you want to be doing at a university is curbing First Amendment rights. Sometimes even when the things that are written or said about you aren't so flattering or necessarily correct. And I think the best response sometimes is, more First Amendment rights. But you got to be careful and cautious and judicious in how you respond to some of these things. This is a learning environment. I don't know the process that your student newspaper operates in or within what context. I've certainly asked people to use situations as learning moments, teaching moments, for how you become a professional journalist. But it's not something I have directly ever interacted with in our student newspaper to tell them I didn't like an article or you shouldn't have printed that or something.
Thank you. We have time for 2 quick questions.
I'm Steve Yates from the Department of Chemistry. I have a comment and a question. The first one is to comment that the previous question you had from this microphone was by my colleague, Bob Grossman. He arrived a little late for this meeting because he was off doing his job, giving a final examination. That's why there was some similarity in that question in a previous meeting.
All right. Well, I realized that it was exam week. Thank all of you for being here.
Well, I was very taken with your tour of the campus last week. It's probably something I would have done also. Had you walked by my office, you would have seen out in the hall a couple of buckets collecting rainwater from the dripping hole in the ceiling. You're from a relatively new campus where you don't experience the same aging problems we have. But in our college, College of Arts and Sciences, it's been 40 years since we've had any new construction. We've had Band-Aids, we've had things, but if you were to go into our general chemistry labs, you would see they look the same as they did 45 years ago when they were constructed. These are very pricey issues. The estimate is $500 million to $1 billion of delayed maintenance and various other problems. How do you address these in a coherent way, particularly in the current climate?
Yeah, although we're a young campus, deferred maintenance is a priority for us. It's a priority for our trustees, too. We have to present a budget every year that includes a direct address of these. And I would say even in our budget climate, trying to make you feel better, when I looked at your decline in state dollars, I had to look a second time because in a 2.5-year period, we went from 350 million state dollars to 250 million state dollars. And that can be quite crushing. And I don't know who's responsible for cushioning the fall for you, but you should be grateful because it's not as severe as what we've experienced. But you have to maintain that as a priority. I think you have to get it on a schedule. And in tight times, we've got to be imaginative on how we're going to find the funds. Oftentimes, we get captured by the glamour of a new project, and we forget about the facilities that we have to maintain. So it is about money, and at a time when money is stretched, you can't lose sight of that deferred maintenance.
New projects?
What are you asking about new projects?
A new building, of course.
Oh, new building. That's always exciting.
Thank you.
John
Quickly.
Anthony from the Department of Chemistry, College of Arts and Sciences.
Yes.
I'd first like to disagree a little bit with the statement you made earlier that athletics, academics, and healthcare have to exist together. I can name quite a few very good universities that don't have a med center or a well-known sports team. But on to my question. You know, we're smack in the middle. You've probably heard the term Valley of Death, the area between the med center and athletics. Resources are crumbling, and very, you know, infrastructure is very poor. We've just recently lost 3 of our most well-funded and best published faculty in the Department of Chemistry just this year. What can you say to the rest of us that you can do quickly to kind of turn things around and actually make people want to stay?
Well, this morning when I met with the administrators, my closing statement was I'd certainly learned through the search process, and I'd learned, you know, from the questions I received that this is a matter to be addressed. I don't have the simple answer for you. I can't tell you what I would do immediately. I'll tell you some of the things we did at our university. And let me say this. I once interviewed somebody who kept telling me what they did at their university, and I said, if you come here, you've got to promise, you know, that you won't say this is the way we always did it at our university, and I won't say to you this is the only way we do it here. You know, you got to put everything out on the table again and have a discussion. What did we try to do? You know, our state budgets went up, and we, as part of that process, developed an investment fund. It was called IMPACT. It was to recruit and retain top scientists. We also added another $10 million that was directed more for cancer to do the same thing. Even in our budget cuts, we have protected that retention pool to try to retain our best faculty. So that's how we tried to keep that priority funded. We made it a priority. It's been reasonably successful. Every once in a while, you still lose a star, but you find solace in knowing that many more people still want to come.
Thank you. One final question.
Dr. Capelouto, I have a very easy question for you. I think, anyway. I'm Harold Kleinert. I'm the director of the Human Development Center. It's the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities on our campus. And I'm also a faculty member in the College of Health Sciences. And I just wanted to get your idea, the sense of the role of interdisciplinary centers that run across colleges in terms of stimulating research, translational research, interdisciplinary research, and your experience and view of using these centers as vehicles.
Sure.
Thank you.
I welcome the question about interdisciplinary research centers. Part of my culture that I live in is a highly collaborative one. Our founding president and leaders used to say we couldn't afford to do anything else. We had such little money. We had to collaborate. And I think it's true. I had a dean of an Ivy League school visit me when I was dean of a school of public health. He wanted to create an AIDS center. We have one of the best in the country, and he wanted to come down and look at ours. He was eventually successful, but he came back and said, your job is entirely different. He said, we have too much turf. We have hardening of the categories. You know, we can't do this as easily. And my experience is, it was an obligation I had to work on something in a disciplinary way. That's part of the culture. But as we've gotten larger, we formalize the way we do this, and we have an interdisciplinary center, university-wide interdisciplinary center program. And faculty can come together and create proposals for centers. They have to get support from more than 2 schools, financial support. We tax our indirect expense recovery dollars about 7% so that we provide the matching dollars out of administration. And these centers bring people together from across campus. We defund centers when they're not successful. They're peer-reviewed. And so that's been quite healthy for our campus. And that's the formal way we have tried to bring people together in interdisciplinary ways that I think our faculty get quite excited about. It really stimulates innovation, new ideas, and the advisory board, a publicly traded company out of Washington that does work on best practices at universities, has identified this as a best practice in building interdisciplinary wide centers.
Thank you, Eli. Would you like to make a few closing comments?
Again, I thank all of you for being here today. I appreciate the seriousness and honesty of your questions. I didn't have an answer, I'm sure, that satisfied each and every one of you, and I didn't expect to. I usually find strength in my answers, though, from interacting with the faculty and staff and students. So I'm energized by it. And I would be honored and welcome the opportunity to continue the dialogue. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you so much. As we leave, pardon? Oh, please remember to send your comments in. We've got a survey running, and I'll be personally looking through the ones from the faculty tonight and presenting them to the board tomorrow morning. Full disclosure, full honesty, I promise. Please keep in mind we have another forum that's moving in quickly.